real question for you.
Yes.
Straight up, right out the gate. When you think of Christian, what do you think of? Like, disregard a minute that we've like take a second to prepare and study for this episode. But like, when you think of Christian, like, what do you think most people think of right out the gate?
Somebody that's religious.
Okay.
Somebody that goes to church, Christian church, somebody that professes Christ, but does all the religious things. So they might have a Bible. They might go to church on Sunday.
Okay.
They might have a believing grandparent or parent or a family member that, brought them to church growing up. I see it from two different perspectives, right? So there's Christianity of the culture, and then there's Christianity for those that are in the body of Christ that understand the weight of that word, that term.
Yeah, for sure, dude. I love that. And it's so true. I think so often we think Christian and we think either Catholic in mass or pointing finger Southern Baptist who's like, you're finna go to hell if you don't kneel before Jesus and doing all those bits. But no, today we're actually going to dive into where did this Christian term came from. And we did some digging, and the first time the term Christian is actually used is in Acts 11:26, where it says, and in Antioch they were called Christians. Now in the book of Acts, we have Jesus's resurrection, and then he ascends into heaven. And then from that, the disciples are then sent out. And the church itself is starting to build. It's starting to form. It's no longer just Jesus saying, upon this rock I will build my church. The church is happening. He himself laid himself as the chief cornerstone, and now the church around it is being built. So from that, you've got Peter and James and John and all these other disciples who are starting to push this movement out, first taking it throughout Jerusalem, then to Judea and in Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. And as they are going throughout these different towns, these different cities, these different tribes and religions and other people, the demographic keeps growing. It comes from this point of it's no longer God just choosing the Israelites. He's chosen all people now. The veil is torn. He's available to all people now. And from that, we start to get this title of Christian being thrown around. Now, the title Christian itself, dude, was actually it was a post-resurrection title given for the followers of Jesus by an outside party, and it just means follower of Christ. In and of itself is not a bad title. Now, keep in mind, the apostles themselves, and when we talk apostles, we're talking about the original disciples, the ones who had direct contact with Jesus, who learned from him directly. That is the 12 disciples, plus Judas, because they were 12 after Judas, and Paul. Those were the apostles. And from that, the apostles actually refer to themselves not as Christians, as bondservants, as children of God, as a holy priesthood, as those who God has sent. They themselves did not call themselves Christian. This was a title that was thrust upon them, whether they wanted it or not. They were called followers of Christ.
So culture, correct me if I'm wrong, so culture deemed those people that were followers of Christ as Christians.
Yes,
it
culture
didn't originate within the church.
No, it was a title that put themselves under.
Gotcha.
From those pagan, from those outside groups of people, those outside parties, if you will.
Do you think that term that culture gave those in the body of Christ, did it have some stigma to it? Was it a positive thing? Because
I think it could be taken in either light, and I think it's very similar to today. And bro, we could go into a whole thing about not letting titles dictate who you are. Titles don't identify your identity or dictate your path in life, but rather they are just labels per se that allow others to categorize each other. And categories aren't necessarily bad, but they can be used for harmful purposes. And from that, we look at the apostles of that day, and then even the disciples of today,
Yeah.
the believers in the body of Christ. You've got people who hear the term Christian and they point the finger back because they think Christians are just a bunch of overly righteous
Hypocrites
who just point fingers at others and tell them they're going to go to hell if they don't oblige by a set of rituals and religious practices.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it also unites you into a community that is the body of Christ, that is the family of God, that you're adopted into the family. And, yes, will gladly put myself in the category of someone who follows Jesus because I'm all in for him anyways. That is true. That is fact. It's an honor to be a follower of God.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be a Christian. But in the stigma and in the culture we're in right now, so often people are like, I don't want to be called a Christian. Because that puts me in a whole category, and then that actually takes them out of relationship with God, which we don't want to happen.
No.
So today, as we continue to dive into this term, we want to dive into, how can we be called a Christian or choose to not be called a Christian and still have an even stronger relationship with Christ, no matter the title that you go by?
Love it.